When I'm telling you, the greatest tennis coach of all time, he had 185, 187 champions, doesn't even know how to play tennis. That's the operative part. Never won a fucking tournament. The joke is, never won a set, for those of you that play tennis. And yet you're gonna spread fucked up shit out of what you're gonna do. When I tell you you don't have to know anything, I am not exaggerating. The results are, in most cases, the lack thereof. But before I do that, I get gifts, not weekly, I mean from the masses. Not weekly, but certainly a couple, 3 times a month. People even send me money for me to pray for them. You know how like you put money in the collection box at the church and that kind of shit? And this is the first time I've ever mentioned this on YouTube. But I don't need any gifts, okay? But this is the kind of thing, and this kid did a lot of work. He distilled, and I'm not giving this to you, the seminar down to 756 statements. This is QLA, 756 little bibs of information. And he apparently, it's his methodology, how he memorized them to, now I said you only need to know 25 or 30. This is typical fucking overkill. He's got it distilled down to 756. Better you have 20 than 756. Now, most of you in this room can't memorize 756 things. You're not bright enough. Your brain's not big enough. Your synapses have all frozen over with fucking caca and shit. I mean, so you know. But this is a great example of what, but it worked for the kid, okay? So we got 2 million kids out there. One kid did it this way, and he's a Dutchman. He's a Dutchman. It's kind of, no comment. I mean, but it kind of says it all. He's a Dutchman. I appreciate, you know, all the stuff that people send me and give me and all that. But it was a comment I made yesterday, and I'm not sure if we were on YouTube when I said it. I've been more or less an asshole all my life. And our daughter says, Daddy treats everybody the same like shit. Yet I get gifts and money and prayers daily. And you've been, forget the spineless twat part, you've been a goody two-shoes. A couple of you have done some stuff that you think is horrid, but I look at it as drop in the fucking bucket compared to the shit I did. But anyway, and yet you've been goody two-shoes, and most of your parents have been goody two-shoes. Now we've got some people in the room that parents beat them, which I'm a proponent of that. But some people in the room that mothers got beat up by their dads. I'm not a proponent of that. Okay? We haven't had anybody in this group where the mom beat up the dad. We've had that too. Now let's just stop and talk about role models. Now you grew up watching your mom beat your dad up. Now your dad's supposed to be the man, or whatever you call him, right? And yet you're seeing your mom thump the shit out of him since the time you're 3, 4, 5 until you're cognizant of what's going on in the world, until you leave home. Now, what kind of indelible, the operative word is indelible, fact pattern does that do to the kid until he's an adult? I remember we had a superstar years ago that wanted me to meet her parents, and we drove across, I happened to be in Florida, we drove across Alligator Alley, which is a freeway on the bottom tip of Florida, all the way out from the East Coast to the West Coast. And we stopped in, and as we drove up to their house, they lived in a golfing community. The parents were rolling around on the lawn fighting, the mom and dad. And the mom was on top of the dad, beating him like a fucking rented mule. And then it all became clear to me what had happened to the kid. And then as soon as we drove up, they brushed themselves off, and they were drinking. They had tumblers. They had 32 ounce. You know how you go to a Starbucks or something, get a 32 ounce big drink, or you go to a KFC, you get a 32 ounce. They had 32 ounce tumblers that were full of ice, and they pour a bottle of vodka. So they diluted themselves, well, at least the ice, all the 32 ounces of ice was diluting down the quart of vodka they put in there, or half a quart, whatever it was. And so it was the quickest dinner I've ever had. We were there and gone in 45 minutes, and the girls cried from that house to Tampa. And those are the days I used to drive still. I drove to Tampa and I had to get on a plane. But when you have no role models, other than bad role models, 99 times out of 100, what comes out is something less than, you want to brag about. Now, once in a while, we had a Chinese kid back in the 90s who had a really shitty life, and he fought against the grain, and he did this, he did that, he worked his way through MIT graduate school, and, he became, blah, blah. One, for the most part, because we're susceptible to that information and that input and those fact patterns, we don't get out of the crab pot. We can't make it out. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, they end up here. But you don't have to be, who'd you see last night? Oh, love means zero. When I'm telling you, the greatest tennis coach of all time, he had 185, 187 champions, doesn't even know how to play tennis. That's the operative part. never won a fucking tournament. The joke is, never won a set, for those of you that play tennis. And yet you're gonna spread fuck the shit out of what you're gonna do. When I tell you don't have to know anything, I am not exaggerating. What are the takeaways about Nick? Well, I talked to Nick a couple times because I wanted to meet him in New York City for the US Open, Tennis Open last year, and it didn't work out. He's a cantankerous old fuck too, as are almost all the super high performance people. They're curmudgeons. He wasn't interested in my idea, my opinion, or anything I had to say. Didn't give a shit. 50 who? What are you, 50 who? You know? What are some of the takeaways about the movie? Yes, sir.
Well, he didn't listen to the critics.
And you do. Remember, in the book, Spock book, constructive criticism is not constructive. And that's why you gotta raise your kids. Well, it's too late for most because your kids are too old. Never saying no and never criticize. Because a kid doesn't know the difference between constructive criticism and just fucking criticism. All criticism is bad. What else about Nick?
I want to be a winner and win winners. So.
Just the opposite of the personal development industry. What else?
I had to jot down a quote. I just thought it was fantastic. And he goes, hey, you gotta know Nick, baby.
Yeah, when he sold out to IMG, I think it was, or the big management company, maybe 15, 18 years ago. He still does promotions and he's still in mid or late 80s now. And the way he broke up with Agassi, okay, that's very, not necessarily telling, but that's the fact pattern in most of the guys. They use their successes, their mentees, and I'm not much different, as a stepping stone to their greatness. And they don't give a fuck about you as an individual. How many times have I told you, and how many times have you heard me say on YouTube, I don't give a fuck if you die tonight. Just don't die on my property. They don't care. Only you care. And how has your program worked out for you? Not worth a shit. What else about you?
The Spartans.
Thank you, God. Thank you. At least everybody wasn't asleep. That's right. The fact patterns of greatness are 95% the same. Whether you're a Spartan, you're a tennis player, or you're rolling up companies. We give you a little wiggle room. We give you 4, 5, 6% of individuality. I don't believe in individuality because you don't have the fucking brains enough to make the right decisions. I like it 100%. But especially now in 2019, you gotta let them do a little. You gotta let them step on their dick a little, Dan. You just can't, people have rights now. Fuck your rights. If you want rights, go to fucking somebody else's seminar. I'm not interested. What else about Nick?
He said that he really drilled in the tennis techniques so that when you're in the heat of a match, you're not thinking about technique. It was just over and over. And after a while, it was just automatic.
Repetitive, like a RoboCop. I mean, and the best kids that do this, the QLA Bots, as we call them, you're going to see after lunch today slides where people tattoo on their chest the 5 credos. Tattoo backwards, so when they look in the mirror and shave, guys, they can read it, because if it's not backwards, then you can't read it. We've got guys Chinese guy who tattooed in English on his forearm, and then he decided to do his roll-ups in China, so he could never wear long-sleeve shirts. He had to always wear long-sleeve shirts because the Chinese people wanted to know why he had English tattooed in his arm. He was Chinese, but he thought he was going to do it in an English-speaking country. We've got a lot of people that have want to, from the time they get up in the morning and they brush their teeth, they want to be exposed to QLA. What else about Nick?
A large part of his training was on mindset.
Well, I mean, world-class athletes, it is mindset, because the difference in their physical abilities is just minuscule, if anything. It's non-existent. It's who is the best prepared between their ears on the day. But I mean, one after another, success leaves clues, they're pretty much all the same. But we're leading up to a crescendo to the biggest asshole of them all, last night that you watched. He is the king of the assholes. He is the emperor of the assholes. What else did you see last night?
Your sizzle video.
Pardon?
Your sizzle video.
Oh, the sizzle video, which is the sizzle video, and we've gotten some comments that a lot less comments, negative comments about boxing than normal, which I don't know what that means anything. There's normally some people that think that it's not right to do that. And I told you, in 1986 to 2016, a woman's handshake has gone from 98 pounds per square inch to 108 pounds per square inch. And a man's handshake has gone from 118 pounds per square inch to 96 pounds per square inch. So women's handshakes have gotten stronger in 30 years, and men's handshakes are gotten weaker. Now that and $2 won't buy anything at Starbucks. But it is the trend. It's not politically correct to be manly. You find a gal who, there must be a course on handshaking. I don't know what it is, but gals seem to, when they shake hands, they spread their fingers so their hand seems bigger, and of course you get more leverage when your fingers are apart. So maybe that's why the handshakes have changed. Anything else about Nick? I'm going to see him this summer, or actually it's in the fall, for the U.S. Tennis Open in New York. I've made my plans to be there. Yes, sir.
He taught Boris Becker to play the man and not the game. So
Yeah.
he got him to psych out Agassi.
Of course, he knew all Agassi's, all the bones were buried. And a lot of the coaches, Butch Harmon, who's a great golf coach, coached, I believe, 7 or 8 of the championships that Tiger Woods had back in the day were under the tutelage of Butch. When they play match play, which is 1-to-1, and he's coaching a guy that's playing Tiger, or he's coaching another guy because he knows the inside track, so to speak, so he knows how to get under their skin, and when it's match play, it is pretty much it's a man-to-man, gal to gal, and you get under somebody's skin, and that's how you wind up winning. Yes, sir.
With regards to Nick, he was wrong sometimes, but he was never in doubt. And then when he was
I like the fact he did 7 or 8 wives. I'm jealous of that, but
and he didn't know their name.
yeah, I was just about to say that, and he didn't know their name.
Like when the interviewers asked him, why did you do this? Like something that was considered a mistake. He thought so little of it that he said, I don't know. I never thought about it.
Yeah, he said I reacted.
He didn't care that it might have been wrong, and he cared less that the asshole was asking him the question. And again, it's the same tone. And I mean, it shouldn't go lost on even the biggest meathead in the room that it's almost the antithesis of everybody, not just this group, it's almost the antithesis of everybody that comes through the seminar. Because you're taught just the opposite. Now, we had a decorated ranger, Army Ranger here, 4 or 5 seminars ago, who was transitioning off active duty, and who had just come back from a deployment in some place where he got trigger time meaning killed him. He understood. It's like Fred Smith told me 35 years ago. He was a platoon leader, Marine platoon leader. Fred Smith, the founder of the American Federal Express. When I found out that my mistake, the collateral damage of my mistakes, were not young boys going back in body bags, I never had trouble making a decision again, a business decision the rest of my life. Because young platoon leaders, the mistakes, and young platoon leaders, by definition, fuck shit up. Young platoon leaders, when you make a mistake, you're infantry platoon leaders like I was as well, they're dead. But when he said that, when I realized that all the mistakes, nobody was dying over it, the rest was easy. And the ranger guy that came through the program, although he never cold-called anybody, and a lot of the stuff he had never done, nobody was dying over it, and it was easy. There's a deal example I give actually tomorrow, Sophie's Choice. It was a movie with Meryl Streep. She won an Academy Award, I think it was 1981 or 82, about a concentration camp, one of the concentration camps, the last few days of the war, World War II. She was sleeping with a commandant of the concentration camp, allegedly to get more blankets and food for her 2 children that were in the concentration camp. That's the storyline anyway. Herr Gestapo Himmler wakes up in the morning and tells her, you did not satisfy me last night, you were a bad fuck. So you must pay the price of bad sex. So she says, you will pick either your son or your daughter to go to the gas chamber. And that's what the movie was all about. So now you're going to pick your 7-year-old daughter or your 9-year-old son to go to the gas chamber. Now that's a dilemma. Which one do you pick? So the movie was all about that. And then 5 hours after she picks the one, they're liberated by the Americans. So if she had just, sucked them off or done something right there, kept them busy for a few hours, the Americans come in, with their flags and their tanks, and they liberate everybody, and everybody's saved. Except one of her 2 kids is dead now. So then the second part of the storyline is she goes back to New York City, and she hooks up with another concentration camp survivor, and they write this book, Sophie's Choice. And then just like Cleopatra and Mark Antony, they commit suicide together, and that's the end of the book. But you're not involved in Sophie's choices, other than surgeons that we've had come through here that are in life and death situations. No decision you'll ever make is going to cost anybody their life. No business decision. Whether you get this industry expert or this industry expert, whether you get this guy to be chairman or that guy to be chairman, you get this CFO or that. None of your decisions are life and death. Yet you ponder and agonize over them like they are life and death. And that's all based on lack of self-esteem, lack of self-confidence, poor role model. Okay, YouTube, thank you.